the mystery out of mindset. Let's take a few minutes. For those of you who want to say hello to the group, just raise your hand, click the little yellow hand, and I will bring you out. Mr. Peter, come on out.
Morning.
Hey, how are you?
Good morning. It's Peter from Massachusetts. Thank you, Linda. Thanks for calling me out.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for hopping on the webinar tonight. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Joan, come on down.
Hi, it's Joan from Canada.
Hey, Joan. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. So excited.
Me too. Rhonda Keenan, I see your hand up. You're unmuted.
Hi, Linda. It's Rhonda from Australia, New South Wales.
Thank you so much for popping on the call.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Thank you. Rob Laney, I see your hand up.
Yes, good morning, Linda. This is Robert AJ from New South Wales in Australia. Looking forward to the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Okay, this list keeps growing. Let me just scan it one more time, and then we can get started. All right. As I said, this is the fourth and final webinar in our series to Take the Mystery Out of Mindset, and I'm Linda Layman, and I'm your host for this series. And I don't know about you, but I just can't believe that this is the last one. I have totally enjoyed every bit of it, and I certainly hope that you guys did too. We have talked about some pretty powerful ideas along the way, so that's very exciting for me. So let's get rolling. We're going to be revisiting what makes up our paradigms and how to change them. You know, as Joel Barker said, to be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigms. Now, I want to take a little bit of review here. As you will recall, this is our wonderful little stick person. And in this representation, our mind is represented by the large circle, and then our body is the small circle. Now, if you recall, the top half, come on, there we go. The top half of the circle is our conscious mind, and then the bottom half of the circle is our subconscious mind. And, of course, that itty-bitty circle, as I mentioned before, is our body. Now, our conscious mind is our thinking mind. You know, it's also our educated mind. This is the part of our mind that our teachers, you know, education, our learning, that's where this is concentrated. Now, also in our subconscious mind are our wonderful intellectual faculties or our mental muscles. Now, let's switch over for just a second to our subconscious mind. We talked about the fact that our subconscious mind is also known as our emotional mind, and it works totally differently from our subconscious mind. If you'll recall, our conscious mind. If you'll recall, in our conscious mind, we have the ability to choose our thoughts. And we can accept or reject any thought or any idea. And we have the ability to actually originate thoughts and ideas. So let's flip back over to that subconscious mind for a minute. It has to accept absolutely everything that we give it. It has no ability to reject anything. It has to accept it, and it has to act on it. But if you remember, the really cool thing about our subconscious mind is that it can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And I think that that's just so cool, because that's how we start creating the life that we want to live. So now let's go back and let's take another look at what stops us. You know, what gets in our way most of the time. So let's see, on the left-hand side is you today, and then on the right side is you as an infant. Now today, we are all being absolutely inundated with information from our outside world. It's coming at us from the TV, it's coming at us from the radio, it's coming at us from other people, and this information is just flowing into our conscious mind. Now, reason is one of our intellectual faculties, and it's with our reason that we have the ability to actually think about all of this information coming into our conscious mind. We can think about what we're hearing and what we're seeing, and at this point we actually have that choice. We can choose to accept or reject this information that's coming right at us, right? Now watch very closely. When we're children, when we're infants, we don't have the ability to think about what's coming into our conscious mind. You see, when we're kids, those conscious faculties, those mental muscles, aren't fully developed, and they don't actually develop until we're somewhere between the ages of 5 and 8. So what this means is that absolutely everything going on in our outside world and our external environment is freely planting itself in our subconscious mind. In other words, all this junk is being handed over to our subconscious mind so that our subconscious mind can act on it. You know, and this is coming from everything, from our parents, from our teachers, from clergy, from stuff we're watching on TV, from junk that other people are telling us. And it just gets repeatedly put in there. You see, it truly is the repetition of these ideas, the repetition of all this garbage going in that causes us to hold the image that we hold of ourselves. You know, our self-image truly comes from all of that information and a lot of times that junk that we're told as a child. Now, as we talked about before, I know a lot of us were raised in a family where, you know, our parents talked about money in a kind of a negative way. You know, they talked about you have to struggle for it. I don't know how many times growing up I heard, well, we can't afford that. Well, what do you think, Linda? Money grows on trees? Or, you know, maybe you were unfortunate enough to be raised in a family where you were told that you wouldn't ever amount to anything. You know, you were told you wouldn't be successful, or if you really wanted to be successful, you had to go to college, you had to get a degree or that magic ticket, if you will, or in order to make a really good living, you had to work for somebody else. Or, you know, the people down the street are rich, and since they're rich, then they probably got their money in a dishonest way. That all of this junk, all of this stuff was planted in our subconscious mind, and it helped build our self-image, and it built those paradigms, and some of those paradigms we're not even aware are there yet. But through this study, through persistent personal growth study, you're becoming aware that something's there. Now, we talked about the paradigm being nothing more than a multitude of habits, and that these habits or this conditioning were usually other people's habits, and they live in our subconscious mind. So we talked about the fact that we have 5 physical senses or external senses. You know, we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And these senses are like little antennae sticking up out of the top of our conscious mind, and these antennae are gathering all of this information going on around us from our external environment, and it's feeding that into our conscious mind. Now, it's actually the intellectual part of the mind that helps us live from the inside out. It helps us to deal with all of this stuff being programmed in or planted into our conscious mind. We have perception, we have the will, we have imagination, memory, intuition, and reason. I love these. You know, it's very important to remember that it's with these intellectual faculties, it's with these mental muscles exercising them, making them grow stronger, that you begin to change that paradigm. We begin to strengthen those. And what we want to do is we want to strengthen those mental muscles and use them for ourselves. We want to use them for our success. You know, instead of allowing them to be like couch potatoes or allowing them to work against us, which can happen, especially memory. Remember we talked about, you know, memory can be used against yourself as you start bringing up things that didn't work out in the past. And so you allow that to stop you from moving forward in your present and in your future. But either way, you get to choose. You know, we really, truly can take over our reins of control, and we can replace our paradigms or that old conditioning. We can replace it with habits and conditioning that serves us better. So where does it all start? You start with a decision. You decide exactly what you want. You decide the person that you want to be. You decide what you want to have. You decide to make a change. Now, as long as you're wishy-washy, or as long as you don't know what you want and you keep coming up with different ideas and, oh, I want this, oh, no, I want that, nothing different is going to happen for you. You must make a decision. So how do those decisions work? Way, way back in the first week of this series, we talked about the fact that everything is energy. I mean, your energy, I'm energy, your computer's energy, air is energy, water is energy. Absolutely everything is energy. And energy is movement, which means it's vibrating. Now, different levels of energy vibrate at different speeds. So we're going to let these lines represent the different levels of energy or the different levels of vibration. And we also talked before that these levels of vibration are also called frequencies. You know, it's kind of like the frequency on your car radio or the channels on your TV or even the different numbers that you plug into your cell phone. It's all on a different frequency. We actually think and feel on different frequencies. Now, something that's in its physical form, something tangible that you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, is vibrating at a lower frequency than something that's an idea, something that's a thought. So we're going to let these puffy little clouds represent our current physical environment, our current results, or our current circumstances, situations, whatever you want to call it. You get it? Now, when you have a goal, you set this goal, and until it becomes part of your physical world, it's still vibrating at a much, much higher frequency. It's way up there at the top. Now, until you make a decision, and I would actually say a committed decision that this goal is what you want, then you're going to remain right where you are, your current results. Now then, if you're making decisions about what you want and making your starting point of those decisions your current results, well, you're actually still thinking along those lower frequencies, and you're going to continue to remain down here with your current results. It's kind of like, I know we've all heard the saying, you can't figure out the solution to a problem as long as you're thinking inside the problem. You have to be thinking at a higher level. You need to be thinking of the solution and inside the solution. It's the same concept. As long as you're allowing your current results to dictate what your goals are, you're going to continue to get the same results. It's only when you make your decision of what you really, really want and you commit to it, and you match your feelings with your new goal, then the magic starts to happen. You know, in other words, put your thinking and your emotions on the high frequency level of what you want. In other words, be it already, see it, feel it, do it, as if it's already happened. Now then, there's this universal energy that flows to and through us 100% of the time. We talked about that. Genevieve Ferrand called it plastic substance. Wallace Wattles called it thinking stuff. But this energy just is, and it's present 100% of the time, flowing through and to and through us. And we actually make this energy what it turns out to be in our physical world by the combination of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, remember? So when you're focusing on your current results, we can say that you're getting X-type results. We're going to call your current results X. Now, these results are directly associated with your paradigms. Remember, the law of attraction responds to the paradigm. It's sitting there in your subconscious mind. So you have this X type of paradigm, or your conditioning and your habits, which, again, are hanging out in that subconscious mind. So these habits, these paradigms, are keeping us feeling these same X type of feelings. So we're taking the same X type of actions, and we're getting the same X type of results. Now, when we're allowing our starting point of the ideas that we think and the thoughts that we think to be these X-type feelings, actions, and results, and the only thoughts that we can ever be thinking are in harmony with our current environment. You know, this means no change. You know, this is how the majority of people live their life. This is living in your comfort zone, or, as I like to say, living in bondage. Now then, as you grow in your awareness of possibilities, or maybe you're starting your personal growth journey, or maybe you just have a gut feeling that you can't explain telling you things can be different. You know, the universe is always for expansion and fuller expression. We're the same way. We have this universal energy in us. So deep inside us is this urging to expand and grow and more fully express ourselves. So when you get this feeling, you can't quite explain it, but you know things can be different. So you get a different idea, different type of idea. So we're going to call this different idea why. You know, you start thinking that things don't have to be the way that they are. Maybe, just maybe, they can be better. Maybe you have an idea. Yes, I can look into starting my own business. Yes, I can travel the world. Yes, I can live in a house I want to live. Maybe it's on the beach. Yes, I can be successful, even though everybody else in my family wasn't so successful. You know, this why idea is totally different than your current circumstances, results, or situations. So you begin to use your mental muscle reason when you start playing with this new why idea. You need to realize that as long as you continue to just play around with this why idea in your conscious mind and you don't get emotionally involved with it, there's still going to be no change. You're going to continue to feel your X-type feelings. You're going to still take those X-type actions, and you're going to continue to get those X-type results. So, what happens when you start to get emotionally involved with your new why idea? You get excited, right? You start visualizing that you're already being, doing, and having whatever this idea is. You start to feel what it feels like. It's about this time that you have some emotions going wild. You have your feelings of your why idea trying to mix with your X-type feelings, and man, you actually start to feel uncomfortable. I mean, your paradigm, we'll call it your paradigm Mr. X, isn't going to go down without a fight. Mr. X is going to first start throwing all the things at you that have worked in the past. You know, this is when you may start hearing that little voice telling you, excuse me, you're crazy. It'll never work. You can't possibly think that you can do this. You can't possibly think that you can be like that person. You can't possibly believe that you can make 10 times more than you're currently making, or move to another country, or start charitable organizations, or do all of these wonderful things. What are you thinking? And you know what? A lot of times this works. I mean, it's worked in the past a lot. And so that's why Mr. X draws on it first, because most of the time it's worked. But now if it doesn't work this time, Mr. X is going to pull out all the stops. I mean, after all, he's comfortable right where he is. He doesn't want to leave. So he calls on his friend, the body. He says, I'm going to get this body involved now. And he starts making you feel worried and fearful and anxious. Now, you might even break out in a cold sweat. You might feel sick to your stomach. You might have heart palpitations. You know, man, this Mr. X is going to get downright nasty if he has to. You know, what you're experiencing is what I call your terror barrier. Yep, you are face to face with this looming wall of terror. Now, then most people will, at this point, just give in to Mr. X and go back to their comfort zone. You know, even though their comfort zone may not be the best of conditions, it's still where they feel at home. You know, in other words, they go straight back into bondage. And on their way, they're doing an absolutely fabulous job of talking themselves out of their great white ideal all along the way. They're justifying their decision not to move forward. You know, Joseph Campbell said that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Now, I think it's really interesting because I had already decided to put this slide into this presentation, but I guess it was over the weekend I saw something on the Science Channel or Sci-Fi. I heard an interesting story that I'd never heard before, and it involved Joseph Campbell. And a little trivia here. Did you know that George Lucas read one of Joseph Campbell's books while he was laid up in the hospital after a near-fatal car accident? And you know what? That's what inspired Lucas to write his Star Wars movies. I just think that that's fascinating. So it's definitely law of attraction that I should share this quote with you. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. You know, I think when you're afraid to move forward, when Mr. X is really doing his best to keep you in bondage, you should ask yourself some questions. Now, this is a great opportunity to question your belief. You know, to vet out that paradigm, see where it is, see if it's real or not. You know, ask yourself, why do I believe this? In other words, why do I believe I can't be successful operating my own business? Why do I believe this? Where did this belief come from? Does this belief serve me, or is it working against me? And then the last question, and I love this one, is there something better that I can believe? And the answer to that one, by the way, is yes. Okay, it's actually through understanding what's going on that you begin to break through and tear down that terror barrier and find yourself on the other side. You find yourself in freedom. So let's go back to that moment where we had this great why idea and we're getting emotionally involved with it. In our paradigms, our good old Mr. X is putting up quite the fight. We want to understand at that moment when we're feeling so uncomfortable that we are absolutely on the right path. And instead of going back to bondage, we want to break through that wall. You know, if an idea, a goal, a dream doesn't excite and scare you at the same time, it is not a goal worthy of the magnificent person that you truly are. You know, I say that because if it scares you, understand 100% you are on the right track. So go for it. You know, how do you break down that wall? You break down that wall by continuing to see and feel yourself already being the person that you want to be, already having whatever it is that you want to have, and already doing whatever it is that you want to do. This is the time to really amp up those feelings, those very positive feelings of already being, doing, and having. This is the time. And by doing that, by being consistent and persistent, you're actually telling that paradigm, you're telling Mr. X, he's no longer welcome here. There's a new sheriff in town. Now you have broken through your terror barrier. And now your why idea is in control, and you're reaching your goals, and you're living your dreams. Now, understand this as well. Once your new why idea gets comfortable, it turns into your new Mr. X. And guess what? You see the wonderful results that you're now living, and you begin to have new why ideas. You begin to set new and higher goals, and you begin to dream new and bigger dreams. And the process starts all over again. Only this time, you actually look forward to that uncomfortable feeling and that negative little voice, because then you know, yay, you are on the right track. So now that we've busted through our terror barrier, I want to talk a little bit about why repetition, why consistent visualization and continued study of this material, of personal growth material, of your discovery series is so important in changing your paradigms and to reaching and living your dreams. So let's see how that works. We're going to let this white line represent the sound of, say, your CD playing. You put your personal growth materials in your CD, and this is playing. Now, this red line actually represents the playing of your CD, so you plugged it in, you're playing along, and all of a sudden, an idea hits your conscious mind. And so we're going to let this blue line be your idea, your thought frequency. So you popped up off of the CD. The CD is actually still playing. But now you have this new thought trip that you've gone on, and so you're thinking about this new idea. Again, that CD continues to play. After you've mulled over this idea for a little bit, your attention goes back down to the CD, and so you listen some more, and then guess what? Another idea hits your conscious mind, and so you're playing along with that. Now, I travel quite a bit, and so it's a grand opportunity for me to listen to personal growth material. And so not only can wonderful ideas hit you, but sometimes if you're driving down the road, an obnoxious driver might pull out in front of you, and so all of a sudden you have to put your attention back on the road instead of really absorbing what's being played. And so, this is why a lot of times people will say, I listen to it again and again, and I keep hearing things that I don't think were there before. Well, it's not that those things weren't there before. It's that you were on these little thought trips, so you just didn't hear them before, or maybe you weren't ready to hear the message before. And I can remember early on in my personal growth studies, I think I told the story that I really became a student of Bob Proctor, and if he recommended a book, by golly, I got the book and I read it. If he recommended a program, by golly, I got the program and I went through it. And one of the books that I read early on was, of course, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I liked the book. I thought it was really good. But then I read it because it seems like in school we're conditioned to read a book cover to cover. Okay, you're done. You can put it away. Well, that's not true. That's not, especially with personal growth, that's not true at all. So I can remember one time after I had studied other material, I had read Bob's book, I had gone through some other programs, and I thought one day, you know what, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to reread and study Think and Grow Rich. And I am so glad that I was in a hotel room by myself when I picked it up and started reading it again, because I think that Randy would have thought I was crazy and he would have hauled me off, because I started reading it, and all of a sudden I was just saying out loud, wow, I get this. Oh my gosh, I get this now. I get this. It's just I was highlighting and highlighting, new paragraphs and new things that I was reading, because all of a sudden it was making so much more sense to me, because I had grown so much in my awareness of this material and what the authors were trying to tell me. So, this is a reason why repetition is so necessary and so important. So here we have just kind of a reminder. You know what? It was the repetition of that information from our childhood that built up those paradigms in the first place. And guess what? It's the repetition of this new information, this information that you want, that's going to help you change that paradigm. So along with really focusing on what you want and getting emotionally involved with that, again, repetition of continued study and personal growth is going to get you there. It's going to get you there faster. So, I just love this concept, and I encourage everyone on the call to go back through some of the material that you have. Go back through your 56 Days of Discovery. Go back through Think and Grow Rich and other books that you might have, and you will be amazed at the new stuff that you pick up. Now, I also want to tell another story. I guess it's story night tonight. This story is near and dear to my heart, as a matter of fact, and most of the seminars that I do, I include this story because I just think it adds such importance. It was first written in Chicken Soup for the Soul by Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, and it was later published in scores more books and periodicals and other publications. It's called the 333 Story. And for those of you up in Canada, it's about your neck of the woods. There was a gentleman by the name of Bob Templeton who actually told this story. Bob was actually on his way back from a workshop or a seminar that he'd been to that my mentor Bob Proctor had put on, and the night before he was heading back, a horrible, devastating tornado hit a very, very small town in Canada. The town was called Barrie. And so when Bob got to the intersection or the place where Barrie was, he just stopped. He got out of his car. He looked around, and he just couldn't believe the devastation. And he thought to himself, you know what? There's something that we can do about this. He was really hanging on to one of the lessons that he learned in the seminar, which was learning about the law of polarity, which states that everything has an equal opposite. So he knew that a lot of people would look at this and they would shake their heads and go, I don't think anything can be done. And he understood that if it can't be done, then the opposite of that is that it can be done, so something can be done. So he really hung on to that idea. And he thought about it, and he pulled his management team together. He was a vice president of a small conglomeration of radio stations in his area. So he pulled his management team together and took them into a room, and so he said, man, did you guys hear about what happened to the town of Barrie? Oh, yeah, we heard about it. The town was basically completely wiped out. He said, yeah, it was horrible. I actually drove past it and got to see it. He said, how would you like to do something for the town of Barrie? And, of course, all of his management team said, oh, yeah, absolutely. We would love to do something for the town of the people of Barrie. And so Bob said, well, good. because nobody's leaving this room until we, A, come up with ideas and thoughts on how we can help the citizens of Barre, and B, a plan to implement what we've decided on. So at this point in time, Bob drew a chart up on the board, and he labeled the chart 333, and he said, what I would like us to think about doing is I want us to raise $3 million in 3 hours, 3 days from today. So here's a picture of the chart that he put up. And about that time, somebody in the group said, Bob, you have lost your ever-loving mind. There's no way we can raise $3 million in 3 days, 3 weeks, or even 3 years. You're crazy. And Bob said, you know what? I didn't ask you if you thought we should do something or if you thought we could do something. I asked you if you would like to do something, and all of you agreed that you would like to. Am I right? And they all said, yeah, you're right. And he said, okay, here's the deal. So he drew this T on the board. And on the left-hand side, he put why we can't. And on the right-hand side, he put how we will. And then he went back to that left-hand side, and he did something pretty amazing. He put a big old X all the way down the column on the why we can't side, and he wrote the word next. And so he said, okay, here's how this is going to work. We're going to brainstorm ideas on how we can help the people of Barre. Now, as you can see, there's absolutely no room on this chart to write any reasons or any excuses as to why we can't do it. So the only room we have on our page is how we will do it. So let's get started. And so somebody hollered out, hey, we could have a radiothon all across Canada. Well, about that time, somebody in the audience said, we can't do a radiothon all the way across Canada. We don't own all of the radio stations, and you know how competitive they are. And a voice from way back in the back of the room said, next. And so Bob said, okay, so we can do a radiothon. Well, then somebody else came up with an idea. They said we could get 2 of our most popular TV anchors to anchor the radio show. Well, sure enough, somebody else said, we can't get those TV anchors to anchor the radio show. They only do TV. And about that time, the entire room said, next. And then the ideas, the energy just compounded itself, and they started flying with ideas and plans. And 3 days from that day, they had a radiothon all across Canada. The TV personalities were more than happy to anchor the show, and all of the other radio stations were more than happy to help out. They didn't care who got the credit. All they knew is that they were helping the people of Barre, and they raised their $3 million. And it was all from this idea. Now, I think that gives me goosebumps every time I tell that story. This is a marvelous thing to do, not only if you're with a team of people, but also if you're by yourself and you're mulling over this grand goal or this grand dream that you want. Pull up this chart and don't allow yourself to give any energy whatsoever to why it cannot be done. Because again, if there's a reason, if there's a way that it cannot be done, there's also a way that it can be done. I mean, I love this exercise. I actually do this in my workshops, as I mentioned, and I've done several of them, and it worked out so great because we had about 4 or 5 different groups of people who worked closely together, and so I was able to split them up into their groups and work on a project together. And it was so interesting because at first, when they started working on it, I mean, I could stand back in the back of the room and I could hear next, 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 a lot of nexting going on. But then just maybe 5 minutes into the exercise, I wasn't hearing next anymore. But I could really feel the whole energy of the room had exponentially increased because now everyone was in a creative mind and they wanted to figure out how they could get it done. So I just love this story, and Bob Templeton went on to utilize this for, I would like to say the rest of his life, but I think he's still living. but he used it in his personal life. He used it in his business life to catapult himself up in organizations. So it's just a fabulous tool to use. So with that, every single one of you has infinite potential. You truly can be, do, and have all that you desire. All you have to do is see it. And I'm talking about seeing it on the screen of your mind, because that's where you're going to see it first, not in this physical form. You're going to see it very clearly on the screen of your mind. Then you're going to feel it, and you're going to believe it. And then you'll actually see it in your physical world around you. So, wow, it truly is hard to believe that we're at the end of our 4-week seminar series on Take the Mystery Out of Mindset. Now, on this exercise page that I've posted for you on my website, www.lindalayman.com/lpu.html, I've actually posted a downloadable version of Bob Templeton's template or next chart. And I've also posted a feedback form. I would love to hear from each of you for you to express how you benefited from this webinar. And as my special thank you for those of you who are not already subscribers to my Layman's Terms newsletter and my Dream Achiever Daily Thought, if you just take a couple of minutes to fill out that form and let me know what you think, then I will add you to these two newsletters. I've gotten a lot of great feedback on those. People actually absolutely love to receive them, so I would love to add you to the list as well. So with that, I would love to open things back up again. You know, we've talked about a lot, and as I said before, it's truly been my pleasure to bring this webinar series to you, and I am so incredibly grateful for the time that each of you has devoted to attending this webinar series, because I know that this can be a chunk of time out of your day or out of your evening, wherever you're located. So I'd like for you to take a moment to start raising your hands if you have any comments or your questions. We certainly have time this evening to talk about that. And of course, if any of you want to pursue the ideas and concepts that we've discussed over the last 4 sessions, feel free to email me at linda.yourdreamachiever.com, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you. And also, for those of you who may have intended to start your 30-day challenge, but you haven't yet, it's never too late. Today is a great day to start. So let's open up, and I'd love to hear from you guys on the call. Oh, Mr. Peter, I think you're unmuted.
Oh, thank you, Linda, and thank you so much. It's amazing, and I'm sure that you put it together this way that tonight's subject really fits with where I am. After going through 2 weeks of this 30-day program, and my ex is definitely trying to hold me back, and the timing's perfect. And as you were talking about it, in the repetitive nature of going through personal development books, I think back to the saying that when the student is ready, the teachers will appear, and sometimes we have to be in the right mindset to be able to accept and to really get into that personal development. And I read a book a couple weeks ago, and I'm starting it again, and I'm looking forward to getting more out of it than I did the first time. And it fits so well with what you've been going through. It's called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting by Lynn Grabhorn, and I appreciate this. It's a book that you've known about. It's an old book in terms of law of attraction, come from about 1999 or 2000, but it just fits so well with what you're doing. I'm looking forward to reading it again and getting more out of it. But thank you so much. These 4 weeks have gone by very quickly, and you've done a great job.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate your participation with this group as well. And kudos to you. I know you have some great things happening, and
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see, who else is out there who wants to have a say tonight? I see. Yeah, I see you, Joan. Come on out.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thanks.
Okay, good. This course has been incredible. It fits in with everything that I'm learning, and you explain it so well, and it's helped me out a lot to get to a place where I completely understand what you're talking about, and it's very exciting for me. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you, Joan, for participating in this call as well. All right, let's see. Who else is out there who wants to say something? I'm looking. Thanks, Peter. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Awesome. Anybody else before we close up this call? All right, going. Let me click over here. All right, guys. I don't see any more hands up, and I don't see any more questions in the box. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to take up an hour of your time for this webinar series, each of the 4 series. It has truly been my pleasure, as I said before, and let me hear from you. I would love to hear what you have to say about it and hear what you think. So I'm sure I'll be hearing a lot from all of you in different things that we all do together. So thanks a lot. Have a great day, a great evening, a great night, wherever you may be. So thanks again, everyone. Bye.